Re-Zero, Side Story, Pristella Reconstruction Journal No. 6, Chapter 1.
The attack on the great underground temple in the Watergate city of Pristella is finally coming to a close. However, as they approach the final phase, the circumstances are slowly catching up with the invading party. Liliana, W. What do I do from here, Ezo? I told you. I told you it was best to proceed as instructed. Liliana, no. It is always the fresh and innovative ideas that break through the confines of the environment and are not bound by existing values. Ezo, that's coming from someone who doesn't have a full understanding of the standards that need to be broken. Liliana, sniffle. Hearing Liliana's reckless desire to be a hero, Ezo judges it. Normally, Garfield would be more in line with Liliana's views, but in the current situation, Ezo's argument was far more correct. Everyone's life was at stake right now. There was no doubt that Garfield was the most pathetic person in the world, stuck in such a situation. Garfield, damn it, he was slumped on the mossy floor, biting his back teeth as his body refused to budge. Garfield was lying on his stomach on the floor, unable to move a single finger due to the mysterious load acting on the space. This is a thing, a punishment for sinners, or so Ricardo had interpreted it. Liliana, oucha. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Liliana's transparent scream goes up, and the board tilts more and more to our disadvantage. Unlike the men who were crippled before her, Liliana was the only one who was free to challenge the last trap of the Great Temple, the giant Shatranj board. The Shatranj board is an ancient board game, where each piece is life-sized, and the game has begun with the commander, Liliana, as the king. However, the board was overwhelmingly disadvantageous for Liliana, who defied the rules from the beginning of the game, and her fate as the king piece was in the wind. With a number of shattered pieces already scattered all over the board, it was only a matter of time before Liliana was shattered at this rate. Ricardo, Liliana-chan. If you lose, you'll probably die, so you've got to be strong. Liliana, What's that? I didn't hear any of that. Ricardo, you didn't even realize it. You'd know it if you saw it. Ricardo waved the hooks on his right arm, and Liliana, hearing his voice, became upset. Even Ezo, who was a wise mentor to the strategy team, seemed to be uncomfortable with the Shatranj board, and it was difficult to come up with a move that would resolve the situation. Garfield, if we lose like this, Liliana will be gone and our amazing selves be? Will the defeat of Liliana, the representative, be the defeat of Garfield and the others as it is? In that case, Garfield would be defeated without a fight. That was when such anxiety flashed through his mind. A small shadow passed by the edge of his vision. Garfield, rats. Garfield frowned suspiciously. This is a space beneath the city, a space that has been abandoned for years. I would not be surprised if there were not one, but 100 rats living here, but Garfield had not seen a single one of them in all their adventures. The only thing that was there was a deformed monsters. The only reason the rats appeared there was because they had come in from the outside. That's not good, Garfield. You can't be too honest. You should be more skeptical and not be poisoned by Natsuki-san. The voice came from the back of the corridor where Garfield and the others had come from. It was a familiar voice, as it should be, but my rational mind denied that it could be. Because the person who this voice reminds me of is badly injured in both legs. Even if the enemies and traps along the way had been eliminated, there was no way to get there. Well, I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. So, my sister asked us to come with her, and we did. I was worried about the captain, too. With that, 2 small cat people appeared from the dark passageway and a basket they carried. In that basket, Otto Suwin rushed to his brother's predicament.
Chapter 2.
Sin will become a wedge which allows no escape. As soon as Otto, Hetaro, and Tivi, Mimi's brothers who appeared carrying him, stepped into the place, the voice directly shook Garfield's brain again. Hetaro, Tivi, it's. Under the influence of the voice, Hetaro and Tivi could not stand there either. Somehow, the dragon was lowered to the ground, but Otto frowned as he crawled out from inside. Otto, I see, This is the load in question. Garfield, oh, Otto bro, Otto, oh, I don't want to keep you wondering. It's a simple story. I asked the rats to scout for me, so I knew what would happen here. Garfield, that's not it. No, it's not. Why is Otto bro here? With a hint of astonishment in his voice, Garfield struggled to keep his voice down. Garfield knew the answer to his own question. Otto came here because he was worried about Garfield. Otto is a very caring person, so it's easy to understand his decision, Garfield, but now that Otto bro is involved. What happens to us if Liliana loses? Our amazing selves can't face the captain or Emilia Summer like this. Otto, I told you, you're taking it too seriously. Didn't I tell you? We jumped into this situation knowing what we were getting into. Why is that, Garfield, eh? Otto shook his head loosely in front of a gritted teeth Garfield. Then he did something even more startling in front of Garfield, who rolled his eyes. He pushed his injured leg and slowly stood up on the spot. The load must have been on for sure. He chuckled at the questioning look. Otto, I know it doesn't seem like much. But what does it matter, Garfield? What about, Otto, sin is a wedge, was it? I can imagine this situation, that it is weighing on each of us. It's not the severity of the sins committed by each individual that makes the difference. Is it, Garfield? Otto's guess, which negates Garfield's conclusion. Otto looked down at his brother, still crawling on his belly, his astonishment, and shrugged his shoulders. Otto, it's not the sin committed that weighs you down, but how heavy you take it. So if you are willing to reopen it, the weight will go away. Garfield, Otto, however, it's hard to truly reopen your mind. That's why I can't stop my knees from shaking. The best of us for this is probably Emilia Summer. Garfield was greatly puzzled when he was told that opening up was the right thing to do. The mind is not an easy thing to free. Especially when it comes to Garfield. In this case, Otto, that's why I'm here, Garfield, to forgive you. Garfield was confused by the sudden offer and choked up. Otto's forgiveness, he couldn't quite grasp what it meant. Otto, I know that despite your appearance and demeanor, you have a difficult personality to reopen. I also know that you can't forgive yourself easily. So let me forgive you instead. Garfield, Otto, I'm pretty sure your regrets are about your family and us, anyway. At Otto's bitter words, Garfield was astonished and could not argue. Garfield can't say anything back to Otto, who laughed at him anyway. It was undoubtedly true. And Otto was right. Garfield thinks he is naive. No, he is ashamed. Garfield, oh, just that one word was enough to lift the weight off of Garfield's body. Hetaro, Captain, we'll forgive you for worrying us when you lost your right hand. Tivy, I forgive you, too. I forgive you for all the trouble you've caused me. Ricardo, oh, yeah, you little bastards. You're so full of shit. With Hetaro and Tivy crouched down and cheering, Ricardo also stood up laughing. Next to him, only Ezo, who had no one to forgive him, was in pain. Why? Then they stood up, Garfield and Ricardo, and looked at each other. Ricardo, so, I'm standing up, but what are we going to do? Why don't we cheer for Miss Liliana loudly from behind? Garfield, no, that's not it. You're right, our amazing selves were too honest. Gently clenching his fists together, Garfield replied with a ferocious grit of his teeth. Then he nodded to Otto, who was standing painfully behind him, with just a glance. Garfield, our amazing selves don't need to be a part of this nonsense. With that, Garfield jumped down the front steps and landed on the board where Liliana was cornered. Then he stood proudly in front of Liliana, the king. Liliana, Garfield-san. This is a rule thing, Garfield? Who decides what the rules are and where are they written? Garfield whispers this to Liliana, who turns a wary eye. At that moment, a piece resembling a knight aiming at Liliana brandished a weapon and closed in on her. Garfield literally kicked him in the face with a spinning kick. Garfield, you can't expect a lump of stone to stop someone else. Ricardo, oh, that's fine. That's something I'm really good at too. With a hearty laugh, Ricardo jumped down onto the board as well, and firmly caught the next piece's blow with his hook. In the meantime, he slams his machete sideways into the vacant torso, shattering it. It was a big mistake to try to start a straightforward contest of wits, Ricardo. The first voice and the atmosphere that started on its own got the better of me. But, now that I'm not going to be asked to win Shotrange, I'll push through, Liliana. Whoa. Let's do it. It flashed an idea. Brain muscle in the middle of the chestnut hair, an excited Liliana strummed her lyre and charged at the pieces, listening to the sound. Garfield and Ricardo attacked, and it took less than a minute to wipe out the enemy pieces. The last, unpleasant load disappeared right after Garfield hit the enemy king, Ezo. Yes, I thought it would be a contest of wits, but in the end it was a matter of brute force. Otto, I'm sure I've been a bad influence, but if you can solve a problem by punching it, it's often the fastest way. I've learned a lot in the past year. When Ezo finally stood up, Otto smiled and closed one eye. Once again, Otto was in the basket carried by Hetaro and Tivi. Then, the group, including the three who followed, headed for the innermost space of the temple this time. There is an object with a vague light on it that asserts its existence, the witch's remains. Garfield, this is, placed on a glowing pedestal. It looked like the bone of a human arm. However, it was very small and probably belonged to a child. So the witch was young. Ezo, very interesting, but we'll have to look into it later. There is a magic cloth. Let's wrap it up and take it with us. When Garfield thought it was in poor taste to gaze at it, Ezo offered it to him, holding back his academic interest. The cloth is made of a special material that is woven with a magic formula that prevents the deterioration of the wrapped object. There is a question of degree, but it is probably best for wrapping bones. The rest, Garfield, now that we've served our purpose. How do we get back? At the entrance to the underground temple, at the very beginning, we fell more than 100 meters. The walls were rigged to be unclimbable, and Garfield hadn't seen any side passages that looked like exits up to this point. Garfield had assumed that there would be a way out once they reached the end of the room. Liliana, well, if nothing else, can I count on Otto-san's blessing? Otto, I'm sure they know we're down here, so if we don't come back for a while, they'll send help. Just like we did, Liliana, so, yeah. Fortunately, we've already taken care of all the scary things on our way here, and now we just need to stay here and wait for help. With a particularly cheerful voice, Liliana placed her butt on the pedestal where she had moved the remains. It was that moment. Liliana, up. The moment Liliana gets on, the pedestal sinks down significantly. Then a quiet earth tremor and the sound of something approaching from afar began to echo. Otto, wait, Liliana-san? What did you do? Liliana, wah, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I insist that I did not. Garfield, this is no time to talk. Oi, this shaking. It happened just as Liliana was about to deny her responsibility. A tremendous amount of water rushed in and rushed at the group. Garfield, the water flowed in with such force that it sank the underground temple and swallowed Garfield and the others in one fell swoop. Quickly reaching out, Garfield grabbed the basket containing Otto. Ricardo, too, grabs Hetaro and Tivi, and snags Liliana with his hook. Then Ezo curls up and defends the remains wrapped in magic cloth to the death. But is swept away. As he was swept away by the murky waters, Garfield forced his eyes open to the dark vision and desperately searched for a way out. With the help of Liliana, Ricardo, and Ezo, Garfield reached the deepest part of the great underground temple, and with the help of Otto and Mimi's brothers, they finally obtained the witch's remains. It should never have ended in failure in this way. Garfield, Bua. The end of the struggle came abruptly. Garfield felt that he was being thrown out of a high place, and after sinking deeply once, he surfaced with Otto in his arms. Garfield managed to catch his breath and looked around. Garfield Dono. And Liliana. And Ricardo Dono. Above the surface of the water, a young man standing on the edge of the moat. Kiritaka, the current leader of Pristella, was looking down at the group, stunned. If you look closely, you can see that the surroundings have brightened up, and everyone has been thrown out of the dimly lit space underground. Otto, Cough, cough, I wonder if this thing is supposed to be drained out? Coughing, Otto guessed the situation they were in. Garfield agrees with him. The waterway, a muddy stream, merged into it and swept Garfield and the others from the dark underground to the bright surface. Liliana, Kiritaka-san. Please help me. The bones, I brought the bones back. Ezo, I'm at my wit's end. I'm not fit to do manual labor in the first place, Liliana complained as she splashed, and Ezo floated helplessly. Ricardo, Hetaro and the others were completely soaked, their hair flattened and they looked like different people. Kiritaka, in any case, I hope all of you all made it back safely. Garfield, oh, thanks to Otto bro. Otto, if you say that, I'm sure it's because of you Garfield. As he relaxed his body and floated in the water, Garfield laughed back at his older brother's words. Then, they both thrust out their fists without either of them, and bumped them together. The group continued to drift in the water, relaxed and surrendered to a comfortable sense of weakness, until a panicked Kiritaka came calling. After a long ride, the group that had conquered the great underground temple returned safely.